session on array formulas in Excel. So what we're going to be covering in this session, well, to start, we're going to talk about what an array formula is and how they work. We'll look at a practical example, which I'll work through in Excel to demonstrate for you. We'll talk about tips for using it and discuss the advantages and disadvantages of an array formula. So, what is an array? Well, in simple terms, an array is just a collection of items. In Excel, these can be in a single row, or in a single column, or in multiple rows and columns. As it says here, one-dimensional horizontal array, one-dimensional vertical array, or a two-dimensional array. So it's just columns and rows, really. So what's an array formula? Well, an array formula is one that can perform calculations on one or more items in the array. Normally when you do a formula, if for, say, 6 rows, you do one row at a time and then copy it down to the other 5 or 6 rows. An array formula would allow you to do it for all 6 rows at once. So array formulas, that's what it says, can return either multiple results or a single result. You can place an array formula on a range of cells, as we've seen, but you can also put a formula in a single cell to apply to a whole range of values. Surprisingly enough, these are called multi-cell formulas when they apply and are displayed in multiple cells, or single cells for one. So the syntax, the way these things look, as you can see from the examples here, they look like pretty normal formulas except for one thing. They have these braces that go around the edges, or squiggly brackets you could call them. So these are achieved by writing the formula, and at the end of it, rather than pressing enter, you press Control and Shift and enter. And that's the key keyboard thing for working with array formulas. Okay, so, well, easiest thing, have a look at one. So I'm going to switch to Excel now. And I've got a bit of data here. So sales information for people, they've sold cars, number sold, the unit price associated with them. So what I'd like to do is get the total sales. Now traditionally I might do this by putting in an equal sign, and then I'd click on the number sold, I'd multiply that by the unit price, I'd press enter to finish it, and I'd copy that down to all these other records. But what an array formula would allow us to do would be to do it in the one step. So I'm going to make sure I have all these cells selected, because this is an array formula to apply to multiple cells. And then I'll write the formula that I want to put in. Equal sign to start it. I'm going to highlight the whole range of the number sold cells and put in the multiplication symbol to multiply them by the whole range of the unit price. And then to finish, I'll hold down Control and Shift and press. And there we are. It's populated the whole range of values, which is a little bit quicker than doing one and then copying to all the other ones that are there. So that's a multiple cell array, an example of one of those. You'll see if I click on any one of the cells in this array, if you look up in the formula bar, then you'll see in there the formula remains the same regardless of which cell I click in. So it makes it for a consistent view of this information. So that's a multiple cell formula. I'm now going to do a single cell formula. Down in cell B13, I'd like to really add up the totals for the number sold multiplied by the unit price. Now I know we could just add up the total sales, but we can do it without having to have those total sales figures there. In cell B13, I'm going to put in a sum function. Equals, I'll type in the word sum and open some brackets. And then, like before, I'm going to highlight this number sold of the cells, multiply that by the unit price, close off the brackets, and press Control and Shift and enter. And the total we get here is the total of the sales based upon the number sold and the unit price, without having to have the sales figures in column E. Now if I went to the bottom of column E and I did an auto sum, then we'll get exactly the same result. But by doing it down in cell B13 here, I actually didn't need to have anything in column E at all. I could do this just based upon the other values. So that is another example. That's a single cell example. And you'll notice when I click on this cell, we see those braces or the squiggly brackets up the top around that information. So that's what array formulas look like. So a few things about them. Well, let's go back and see what it says in the world of PowerPoint. Working with arrays, the key thing is pressing Control, Shift and Enter. When you create one, you need to press it. When you edit or change one, you need to press Control, Shift and Enter to get out of there to maintain the array. Okay. If you're working with multiple cell formulas, there are also specific rules associated with these. You've got to select the range of cells first before you write the formula. You can't change the contents of one individual cell of an array. I'll show you what I mean. If I go back into my Excel file, if I went to one of these cells in here and I tried to change the values in there to something else, you'll see I'll get an error message. Because it's part of an array, it actually is like having the cells locked. You can't change any part of that without changing the whole lot at once. Okay, so that's what it talks about there. We can't change any individual part of it. And also you can't move or delete an entire, sorry, you can move or delete the entire array formula, but you can't move or delete part of it. So once again, if I go back to my Excel file, if I went to delete, say, one of the rows of information that's in this list, then when I click on delete from here, you'll see it says, oh, you can't do that. It's part of an array. So if ever you see messages like this, that's usually why they've come up. You're trying to work with something that's part of an array formula. And remember, you'll recognize the array formula by the squiggly brackets that appear around it. Okay, so what else do we have? You can't have blank cells in a multi-cell array formula as well. So what are the advantages of an array? Well, one thing is consistency. As it says, and we saw when you clicked on any of the cells, you see the same formula in all the cells, which can make it easier sometimes to understand and make sure that the data is accurate. Also, as we saw, you can't overwrite part of the array formula. If I go to change any individual cell, it won't let me do it. I have to do it all or nothing. And only for really large amounts of data, but it can give you a smaller file size. Now that means, as we can see here, I could have written one formula and copied it down for 11 cells, but instead I can just write one formula to do that. So if you're writing less formula, less calculation for Excel to do, so that can cut down the file size and increase the speed at which it works. Primarily that would be an advantage for really large spreadsheets. Of course there are disadvantages of the array formulas. One is, if you forget to press Control, Shift and Enter and you try to get out of the cells, then you may end up losing your array formula associated with it. So for instance, if I went back into Excel and I go to my total down the bottom in cell B13, if I go to edit this, I might change one of the cell references to something else, then I have to press Control, Shift and Enter to get out of here. If I just press Enter to get out of here, the whole thing falls apart. So Control, Shift and Enter, very important. Also, because it is different to normal formulas, other people may not understand what you've done. They'll just get those messages when they try to change things, that things are part of an array. So you may need to educate people a little bit about the sort of formulas that you're using. And I guess finally, depending on your system, large array formulas, it says, can slow down calculations. Now I haven't ever really seen this, but I guess it might be if you have older computers and you've got large formulas that you're calculating on. Generally, I found it speeds up things, but it's something that you can look at and work with. Okay, so that's really what I want to talk about in this session, just an introduction to array formulas. So the key things to remember about them is you can apply them to multiple cells, that you need to press Control, Shift and Enter when you finish the formula, and it allows you to lock down the cells so people can't change parts of that array. Okay, so hopefully you found this interesting. If you have any further questions, please contact us at ATI-Mirage. We're happy to help at any time. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you the best of days.